Welcome to another great episode of PassionateSoccerCoach.com. Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to 2024. We have a great guest to kick off the year, Mike Kulas. So, Mike, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience and everybody here?
Yeah, sure. I'm so happy to be on, Aldin. And my name is Mike Kulas. I'm the head coach at the University of Hartford for the men's soccer team, and then I coach the boys 2013s and 2012 age groups, and I oversee Zone 1 at Oakwood Soccer Club, and been coaching for since I was really young in college, and always involved in the game. And I'm now much older and have a lot more experience, and I've enjoyed coaching at the college level, but also the last year coaching the younger groups and seeing how much further ahead than most of these kids are than a lot of us were when we were their age. So it's been pretty good the last year.
Excellent. Welcome. I look forward to our discussion today. So, Mike, overall coaching philosophy that you have over the years that you've developed, what's your philosophy? What do you stand for?
My overall philosophy is that, well, first and foremost, I think the game is the best game in the world because it involves the player having to problem solve. There's no timeouts. It's constantly moving, and there's so many aspects to it, from like a young age when a kid is just starting out at 6, 7, all the way to 12, 13, and then they have to evolve to a bigger field. I love the fact that you can go anywhere in the world. And if you don't speak the language, you can at least communicate through the ball. And I've enjoyed, the journey of getting to like evolving as a coach. But even odder enough, like I still kick around with the old timers, and I feel like I even evolve still as a player, like as odd as that sounds. So I don't know. My philosophy is when you show great respect to the players and you're enthusiastic, even if your messaging or your knowledge of the game is not the highest, you still have this ability to connect with the kids. And I don't know, I'm intrigued almost every day. Like I'm trying to search for different things, different ideas. And I think the other philosophy is you have to evolve, not just as a player, but as a coach. And I've been fortunate. I've had so many great coaches and great like mentors and people that just, one, they're soccer people and they love the game, but I could go through so many people and tell you, geez, I picked their brain for, I still pick a lot of brain, but my friends and now colleagues, and it's like it's nonstop. But my philosophy is treat everybody with respect, regardless of level, and be enthusiastic in what you're trying to accomplish in the session, or if it's a longer kind of, if you're looking at a bigger picture, making sure that you're rejuvenating things as you go, so that when they're done with you as their coach, whether they're 12 going to 13, or you had them for 2 years or 4 years, they still love the game, and they still want to play it when they're older.
Excellent. So you have the luxury of coaching college level and youth level. What's the major or fundamental difference between those two levels in coaching styles?
Yeah, I mean, for the younger kids here at the club, like our Zone 1 philosophy is we want the kids playing under pressure, but not the pressure of the coach screaming at them or demanding. We want the activities to demand a level of intensity and a level of pressure that they're competing. But also, like, we're introducing the concept of like shape, and like we're not having tactical analysis with the a 10-year-old, but we're making sure that my three biggest things, that they're getting better with the ball, they're better with the ball under pressure, and their reaction times, whether they've done something good or bad, is very good and very quick. Because when we were growing up playing, you could play 15 balls back across the back line and coax the team out. Well, everybody presses now at the youngest ages, at the highest ages. Everybody's even if they're not pressing high up the field in a high press, even a low block, teams are, the quality of pressure is better, the organization is better, even at the younger ages. Excuse me. But for us, we want the kids to be prepared at 13 when they get to the bigger field. And, you know, positionally, we're not sure because some kids might play as a forward and then a goalkeeper in the second half. So trying to figure out and forecast their development based on what position we foresee for them. But the best advice I got in regards to the younger teams was everything should be done under pressure. So like to go along with your question, the college guys, we're going to start off the session with some type of dynamic warm-up with the ball. Probably not going to be getting right into a 1v1 or a 2v2 types, but with the young kids, we skip the warm-up. We get them moving a little bit, but we start with 1v1, whether it's their back to goal. They're going to be under pressure right away. And we've seen a lot of good progress with a lot of the kids, and it's not comfortable for them, but also making it competitive. And like with the college guys, the older group, you can't just start, getting after it right away. You have to kind of build up to it. So there's definitely more of a couple phases before we get to the meat and potatoes. But with the younger groups, we're looking for them to transition. Obviously, one of the biggest aspects is the becoming a team and working with others. And we talk a lot about forgiving themselves. So if you make a mistake, you might be upset with somebody. You got to forgive them quickly. You might be really upset with yourself. You have to forgive yourself quickly because the game is moving too quick, and it's so much quicker than it was when we were growing up. There's really no time to pause until halftime. So they have to figure out at a young age, like how to just move on quick and get on with the game. And I think like the two groups that I've had here, that was a big challenge. And it wasn't necessarily a soccer thing. It was more of like encouraging them to like make mistakes. Like, go ahead, you can. Now, if you're going to dribble out of the back 3 times and you get stripped 3 times, that's an issue. We'll have to have a discussion. But if you're in the right part of the field and you want to do your thing, try it, especially at training. And I think they've developed a confidence that like the world's not going to end just because they've made a mistake or two. And as long as the ball's not in the back of the net, everything's pretty solvable. So that's the messaging that we give the younger kids. The college guys, we have to demand a little bit more. We have to. It's more of an emphasis on winning. But even over the years, like when we were going through college, we were still part of that generation where we just did what the coach said, and we may not agree, but we just did it. And now there's more of a give and take. Like, why are we doing this? There's always that why question. And for us, like at the university, we're going through a transition, and we're trying to enjoy the game, but also play a certain way, make good decisions. Some of the similarities and the parallels between those young ages and the college guys is not much different, other than the fact that we know that there's more of an emphasis on restarts, dead balls. We're trying to be much more organized shape-wise. We are a little bit more conservative in certain games, so there's a lot more tactical thought there. But at the end of the day, we tell the college guys, when you graduate here after 4 years, we want you to still love the game. We want you to be connected with your teammates, and we want you to have an idea of how to play the game the right way, because you're not always going to be able to run. So can you play over 30 or over 40 and kind of promoting a healthy lifestyle and be able to play the game without relying on just running into somebody? And I think most of the guys that come through or have been around me know that that's important,
What about like new coaches? What would you say? What kind of challenges would they face coaching youth soccer versus college soccer?
I think patience is a big one. Because you're with the younger ages, you're talking to kids. Like sometimes they're not mature enough to handle a conversation with a peer, so you have to kind of facilitate. You want to let things go and see if they can solve those moments where they have disagreements on the field, but you do have to step in and tell them like that's really good. I like what you did there, or that's inappropriate. You're not going to talk to somebody that way in the field. So like there's a lot more non-soccer things that we coach with the younger ages as opposed to the college guys. But an 18 to 22-year-old kid still needs that conversation, how to handle conversations with professors or with coaches or teammates. Still, like they're just they have 6-7 more years of life in them. So you hope you don't have to coach that stuff too much at that level, but the younger kids, for a new coach, it's almost less about, to me, this is my opinion, less about the soccer stuff and more about generating the ability to work with a team, teammates, how to, do the fundamentals right, soccer-wise, and developing like that energy and excitement for the game that, that we saw when we were kids. And that's one of the biggest things. I look back on my time when I grew up here at Oakwood. I played baseball up until middle school. I thought I was going to play shortstop for the Yankees. And, I came from a baseball family, and at the time the World Cup happened in '94, and that's when the baseball strike happened. So it was a perfect storm for guys like me, my younger brother, all the kids in my town, that all of a sudden there was no baseball and only soccer, and it was here in our country. And the guys here at the club were so, like, it was so different, like, from the baseball coaches I had. It was like, there was so many passionate guys and knowledgeable guys that I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, this is unbelievable. And that's what I hope to bring to those younger kids. Like, and that's where a lot of young coaches might go. They think it's more about analytics. They might think it's more about the bells and whistles, when it really is about building the relationships with the kids, making sure that they know that, hey, look, this is how we want to play, but also this is how we want to behave, act, treat each other. And it's, and hopefully those kids are not leaving training going, oh, that was really hard, and I don't like that. I want them to say it's really hard, but man, I had a good session, and we're getting better, and that's the end goal, because there's a lot of pressure on the kids, to be perfect, and they shouldn't feel that way. They should feel like the game is the best game they could play.
That's a great point. So talking about the pressure, like, how do you deviate that through motivation and communication? What kind of different communication styles would you have with the youth and then with the adults?
Yeah, I mean, with the older kids, you can address them more in a group setting where, you probably can have a go at them and address that maybe they need to raise their level in the group. And I think with the younger kids, my approach has been, if collectively we're having a tough day, or it's really like not their mentality, but they're just having a bad day collectively, I will address the whole group. But as far as singling people out to try to get more out of them, it's more of a, like a personal conversation, where it could be even really informal, where it's like before the training, call them over and say, hey. And one thing that I learned, a parent told me in 1999, 2000, she said, you're a big guy. When you talk to my son, I know he's a little intimidated by your size, so you should kneel down. And I thought, oh, so I kneel down a lot. I kneel down to almost eye level with him, and I'll say, hey, we expect that you're going to work harder and take care of the ball, or whatever the situation might call for. But it's never a moment where, like, we're writing a kid off, or even when they have moments where they're not having a good day, or maybe they've lashed out at a teammate by kicking them. Yeah, we might have to sit them down for a minute, but it's like explaining to them, like, why you don't do that, or the technique of defending better, or taking care of the ball better. And you kind of explain it so you don't have to sit anybody out. There's really no punishment, really, but there's definitely conversations, and a lot of it is informal. And it can take 30 seconds. It doesn't take long to tell a kid like that. And I pull a lot of kids aside to tell them how good they did, because a lot of kids are really uncomfortable getting positive praise. So you bring them closer and you say, hey, you did an amazing job, and then you see them the rest of the session, and they typically are performing at a good level, where, like, if you announce it, some kids are a little not comfortable with that. So
looks like you're building great relationships and you're fostering, the team dynamics. That's outstanding. Is there any tips you can give to potential coaches or parents or whoever takes over different levels, right? how do you foster team dynamics? What kind of exercises or anything you can do to build the camaraderie, like to promote working together? Because I think you mentioned at the college level, you push the team and all that stuff. Like you gotta, become a team. Otherwise you won't be able to compete. What can you do like to offset some of that new players coming together or building relationships or building a camaraderie?
Yeah, I think like some of it is very simple. That's a good question because I didn't really think much of it when I started with these younger groups a year ago. And I noted that like our best teams in college, like I've been coaching college for 16, 17 years, and my boss was really good at bringing a lot of different cultures together. So we were always diverse. I worked with him in Wisconsin at a Division I school. I played for him. And one of the things he told me when he was recruiting me was, if diversity and having a very diverse team is important to me because of these things. One, soccer-wise, the players bring maturity to the group. International guys like come over, they're a little older, they might have taken a gap year or whatever. And then when you leave here, you'll have the experience of working for 3-4 years with different guys from different cultures. So when you go to the real world and whether you're coaching or working in an office building, you can have more of a relationship. You can build relationships based on the fact that, you played with a guy from South Africa and you played from a guy from Sweden, and you have a guy that is your roommate who's Trinidadian. And so like, that was important to me when I was going through that. And at the club here, we have the group I had last year that's now U13. I started with them and I said, look, we have guys we have a Peruvian, we had a kid from Korea. We had a Jamaican kid, and we went through the group and I said, where are you from? And everybody had something, even the American kid like myself. I said, look, my mother's Italian, so I always sided with my Italian side, but my dad's Polish. And so we went through, and every kid was like, was different. And I said, look at us, like we are a diverse team. Like we might think, oh, we're from Glastonbury, or like this is where the club is based out of, but we are all very different. And the goal is actually to work together. So that was like one of the first conversations we had. And we would kind of always talk about that. Like, it's funny how a Jamaican kid can play with the white kid from Glastonbury, and like they're pretty tight, like they're like buddies and they play well together. So it's like, if we can do this, I mean, we could become unstoppable, but we have to work together, but we are different, but we have to kind of find a common ground in how we go about our business. And that was that group. And then, as far as like just instituting rules, like, look, you have a good group, and when we show up to the field, the kids look and they say, oh, look who's playing over there. Oh my God, that kid's over there. We made a rule that said, look, we respect all, but we fear none. And we want to respect the good players. We're, like, of course, they're good players, but we're good players. So that was one way with these younger teams to say, like, look, we don't want to put people on a pedestal. We want to be a good team. So people are like not concerned about one or two guys. They're concerned about the whole team. And I think we've gotten to a point where like the expectations for those groups are higher amongst themselves, and they're bummed when they don't get the results. But we don't talk about winning per se. We talk about like what leads up to the winning part of it. Like if we take care of A, B, C, and we work our way all the way down to the alphabet, when we get to the end, we probably will have a good result. But if we focus just on that part and we're not worried about the working together and communicating and all that stuff, I can guarantee you we're going to have a hard time. So it's a work in progress, because some days you're like, wow, this is amazing. And then other days you're like, oh man, this is not so good. But that's kind of how I've approached it, even with the younger teams, Oh,
that's outstanding. People tend to forget this is not tennis, right? It's soccer.
Yep.
It's a team sport. Everything you do is collectively versus individually, right? Certain circumstances, demand, some individual play, right? But everything else has to be done collectively. What about like tactical and technical differences in age groups? When you're teaching, when you're coaching, Um, I know like we'll focus more technical when they're younger, right? But and more
Yeah.
when they're tactical. Like, what's your approach on that side?
Yeah. So I got some really good advice last year around this time from an alum of Oakwood who works down at Inter Miami, and he does the Zone 1 ages like U11, U12, same ages. So he was in the building last year, and his name is Benny Applefield, and I had known him since he was a player, and I always knew he was a good guy, and he's done really well. And he's a very even-keeled, good guy, good teacher of the game for a young guy. And so I tracked him down in the building, and I said, look, I've got these younger teams, and I haven't done them in like 10, 12 years. What advice do you have for me? Because my session, it takes a long time to get going. And then once I do this, like the second phase, like where I have them going, like it's 2v2v2, or it's 1v1, 2v1, it gets going. And he said, look, our philosophy from our technical director at Inter Miami is that we don't do anything, whether it's zone 1 or the different zones before obviously the first team. Every technical activity we do is done under pressure. And so he goes, like, give me an example of a session. So I walked him through, and he goes, just don't do the passing patterns. Like that's really, if you ask anybody, passing patterns are like the most boring, mundane thing, unless there's some aspect of combination or some type of, tweak to it that really allows them to get moving and have to think. But most of the time it's just very cookie cutter. So he told me, try this. Try, if your session is tomorrow night, try just starting with 1v1, like to small goals. Or one thing that I've done with the younger groups is instead of passing to a goal, they have to dribble through. So we start off like once a week, we'll do dribbling through a gate. That way the defender has a chance to make that recovery if they do get beat, and the guy on the ball has to protect it and has to have a little bit more of a lethal thought to I have to get through the gate under control to score a goal. And then the next day we might do to small goals where they have to pick their head up a little bit more and set the guy up and shape a ball, and the defender has to block that kind of passing lane. And that was a game changer as far as for me, because we really accelerated. The sessions became they were dynamite. It got going pretty quickly, and the kids liked it much better. So
That's fantastic how you balance competition and fun as well, make it more competitive. Outstanding. In terms of like long-term impact, I know you mentioned this at the beginning of the discussion, how kids are more technical, more advanced than like they used to be because of emphasis of training, or even starting earlier. Like some kids start 4, 5, and 6. What about long-term impact? If it continues like what we're seeing, you think that helps them? Like if they start earlier, like love for the game, or does it become dangerous because they get burned out, or they're gonna quit, and we don't want like.
There's so much more offerings now at the younger ages where I have a 7-year-old son who's just starting to like really enjoy the game, and and my wife and I talk about things, and he's a few years off the the ages that we're coaching. But my message to her, is we want them to enjoy the game, try their sports, love it, and kind of, if he gets to a point where it's town soccer, it exists, but a lot of kids go right into a more formal club and they're training more. So balancing that is really hard. My advice to some of the parents that have talked to me, and I said, look, I don't have a kid your age, I can't really guide you. And I've learned a lot over the last year of like, look, everybody's playing futsal these days. There's supplemental trainings, like really, really good coaches that are offering such like good training. But like, if I'm being honest, my advice is your kid has to take ownership for their own development. So that might mean they're outside on their own. If they're putting on a hat and gloves in the winter and they go out and they're juggling and banging a ball against the wall, that's a real positive thing. And that means you're not driving them somewhere. You're not maybe footing the bill, but there obviously are really good benefits to the kids that are doing this, because you see how advanced they are. I haven't seen, too many kids get burnt out in the last year. And I've scheduled a lot of different things that, even during the winter, I'm like trying not to take a break. I want to see them play. I enjoy seeing them play more so than training. So it's like, I don't want to overdo it, but I also don't want to underdo it. But I also know that they're playing basketball at this age. Like, I'm sure you have kids that are, they're playing futsal, playing basketball, playing flag football, and then they're playing for you. And you want them to be like kids, I guess. And I know for like my son, we talked about signing him up for futsal, and I live in the southern part of the state. It's like, I don't know, maybe we wait a year, like, let's get him playing basketball. He still hunts for bugs, like, soccer's there. He knows what's going on with it for a little guy, but I don't want him to be burnt out with too much. And I would say the same for the guys that are in zone 1 here, like the 11s and 12s. We don't want them to like loathe coming to training. We want them to like enjoy coming, being around their teammates. But yeah, it's a tricky balance, because a lot of people feel left out if they're not doing certain programs. But my bread and butter that I go to is, and you're probably this way because we're the same age and generally, is how great was it when you had a ball and you just went out on your own and just trained on your own. You got away from your brothers and sisters. You improved yourself. You got some fresh air, and before you know it, like, you really did take, that's where the leaps and bounds happen developmentally. When it's on your own, and you're the kid is taking ownership for their own development. So.
Yeah, but we're talking about passion, right? A kid that has passion and desire to continuously improve, and that's hard. Like, and you can't teach that, by the way.
Yeah,
it has to come within, as you mentioned as well. And that's when I see that's, to me, it's like sprinkles of fire. They have to put gasoline inside and just keep working off that passion. And I'll take 20 of those players versus one superstar, because with those players they're going to work at double as hard in practice than some of the other kids, which that's attitude, coming back to attitude. What about, like, talk about attitude, different work ethics, mindsets, like from youth to adults? Like, what would you say, like, their attitude changes? Or
I think sometimes the attitude changes when you have a kid who's on the smaller field, and they're clearly technically better and really tactically understands the game better, but maybe they're limited in their mobility, and then they get to the bigger field where they have to cover more ground, or maybe they're just not strong enough at that time at 13 to extend their passing range. And you see some kids, or vice versa, where it's like the biggest, strongest kid, and it's constantly changing. Your roster is like, you have guys that are on the bottom of your roster, and then they're in the middle, and then next, within 12 months, they're at the top of the roster. And some kids are at the top and they go to the bottom. And a lot of it that's where maybe you see an attitude change, in the sense that the game becomes a little harder in whatever way. And they don't necessarily just keep plugging along. They think, oh, well, this is hard, and they might have an adjustment in a negative way to their attitude. And then you have kids that you might not, they're really unassuming, that all of a sudden they have a growth spurt, and they become better with the ball, or their understanding of the game kind of clicks, and then they become maybe a more positive influence within the group, or like in general. I've seen that happen over like the last year, too. And, and then like at the college level, you have the attitude problems where kids are coming in and everybody says, oh yeah, I want to play college soccer, but they don't realize like they're going to have to put a lot more into it. And I saw a really interesting clip going along with this question. It was a podcast, a clip of a podcast about hockey, youth hockey. And there was a guy, I think he was a coach, and it's like a bunch of old NHL guys, and they're asking the guy they're talking about parents and players and expectations, and and the guy said, look, if your kid is 10 years old or 11 years old, and you think he's going to be a pro at 10 or 11, I got something to tell you. Let's make that decision once he's introduced to, when he gets older at 14, 15, 16, when he's introduced to social life, girls, parties, different other distractions. And you see those kids, the kids that maintain the level are the ones that are going to make it, because their understanding and ability to sacrifice and stay on course with the developments in their sport is going to be what makes them. So many guys are so talented and they take their foot off the gas at 14, 15, 16, and they fade out and they never play again. And his point was like, it should be about fun. It should be about development, getting to that point, and then hopefully making the right decisions that allows you to still develop at that 14 to 16, 17 range. And I don't know, I thought that was pretty good. Like the way he articulated it was so simple. I was like, yeah. Because everybody thinks their kid is going to be good if they're at the top at 12, but it's always changing, and I don't know. The attitude part of it is crucial, because so many coaches now I can deal with somebody that's got an odd attitude, not the best attitude at times if they're producing, whether they're 10 or whether they're 22. I have a lot more understanding, but it gets old very quickly. And if you don't produce, then, it's probably not going to work out. And in general, most people there's so many good players that anybody with a bad attitude. And at the college level, we kind of do our research with the parents. So if the parents have been a handful at the club that they've been at for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, that's a red flag. We probably are not going to be pursuing the kid. Like, we're not going to be overly aggressive recruiting wise. And sometimes even at the youth level, you have families that are, maybe challenging. I think I'm pretty understanding, but sometimes people cross the line and you have to just make a decision that's best for the group and ultimately the club, where, this is not how we're going to handle things. So the attitude typically comes from the home. The kid is, if it's a good kid, he was going to come from a good home. The conversations in the car are important. If we win a game, it's not just your kid's 2 goals that won us the game. Maybe it was, but it's a group effort. And then the next time, it's not a good game. It's not just everybody else's fault. And I think that's the message we kind of try to send is coaching wise here too. Like, we're together here. Like we do well, it's us. If we fail, it's us. So it's like, take the pressure out of like the kids thinking it's just about them,
That's a good way of seeing it. So over the years, Mike, as a coach, you must have made some mistakes and lessons learned, right? What would you give some advices to like coaches getting into this, into our craft, right?
Yeah.
So they don't make the same mistakes as we did in the going over.
Yeah, I sometimes I think back and I cringe because the guys here at Oakwood were so good to me as a kid, and then they gave me my first opportunity as a coach, and I remember doing a session at a camp, and it was a higher level camp, but they gave me a good group, and I trained them like I was training the French national team, and they were probably 13, 14 years old, and I think I was a little too harsh or a little too serious. Like I was approaching it like I was coaching them to qualify for the World Cup, and really I should have had a different approach. And I think over the years I've developed not to take things too seriously. There's some like non-negotiables where like if a kid's attitude is really out of line, we have to, you can't train today. That's few and far between. Not taking things so personally. If things don't go well, like none of the same way we're coaching to be successful or coaching the kids to be successful. No player is out there to undermine the coach really, to not do well. So like I've kind of let a lot of stuff slide off my shoulder at times, but the bigger issues you have to address. And then just making sure that you're energetic, you're standing upright, you're communicating with the kids, like just real simple things that go a long way, because just like players, coaches don't always have their best day. The other day I had to change my session, the spacing of one of my activities probably like 6 times. I just couldn't get it right. And I was thinking, man, I'm either hungry or, like I'm just lost. Like, so like just being, able to kind of adapt. And any young coach that's coming up that thinks that being an assistant is beneath them, I think one of the best things I did was I was very open to being an assistant. I was an assistant coach at the college level for a long time to my college coach, who gave me a lot of responsibility, or I earned a lot of responsibility. And I think if you have a plan, and you're constantly learning as a young coach, good things will happen, and you develop a network and you develop a reputation. And my advice is to keep evolving as best you can. And then obviously, don't worry about the mistakes you've made, like just keep plugging along and make sure that you're having fun. I mean, I enjoy it. I enjoy the sessions, the games. And sometimes I do have to remind myself, like the Zone 1 kids here, we may not have to go every weekend. We might have to give them a weekend off during the winter because we want to go pretty hard in the spring. And, I have to dial it back sometimes. And sometimes I get a reminder from the directors or from, even a parent might go, hey, just a heads up. We're going to go on a family vacation. It's like, oh, wait, you know what? I think that's a good idea. I think we should all have a break for a couple of days, it's not a bad thing, but that's kind of what I would say to any young coach. And then most importantly, get your licenses. Go for your coaching licenses.
Well, those are all great advices. Well, Mike, hey, that's it for today. Thanks again for your time. I appreciate all the inputs. That's really, really valuable. And thank you.
No, thank you for having me. I hope that this was helpful, and yeah, have a good rest of the day.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Aldin.